the fire alarm going off? Is that more than one? Hello, welcome back. I am Scarlett. If you are here, thank you very much. If you're here, as I said in the last video, you should probably check out video 1 in this series where I'm talking about first lines way more in depth, why they matter, looking at examples, explaining in detail my lovely creation called the 5 First Line Lessons of Literary Lust, which is not about lust, but is in fact clickbait leading to how to write better first lines, because that's how we do here, apparently. And, you know, if that's something you're interested in, if you have a first line from your story that you would like for me to review, I have in the description my link to the Google Forms under first line submissions or something like that. So let me know down below. And if there's anything that you would like for me to talk about regarding your own writing, let me know. I can talk about last lines, that's always fun, or characters or something, but nothing like too terribly in depth because I want it to fit in a Google Form situation, and because if I get people sending me whole manuscripts, I'm probably gonna cry because that's just a lot. So let me know all down below if that's a thing that you got suggestions about. I'm normal and talk well. I just filmed 2 of these videos. I've been talking for like, I don't know, a million hours. So I'm sorry if I'm a little crazy, and if you've seen this outfit before, like I said, no you haven't, is the first time I'm wearing it. We gaslight here now, apparently, but just very obviously. Okay, so let's just first talk very, very briefly over what those 5 first line things are. So we've got intrigue, which breaks down into 3 categories, which is bold, weird, or ambiguous. And then we have theme, tone, stakes, and context. So now that we know those things, let us take a look at the last few that I have of things people sent me. I got a lot of these on TikTok, so that's where this all started. At Scarlett_Ansley, that's me on TikTok. But it's hard to get people to go from TikTok to here. So I had like over 1,000 something responses there. I got like a couple, like what, 12, 15 here, which is totally fine. But yeah, if you have ones, let me know. I will try to keep up with them if people actually send them, but I'm very small as a creator. So, you know, just as a plug, if you like anything about writing, reading book reviews, crafting first lines, I'm a writer just for, you know, what's the word? Credential. I've written for companies all over the world and in different industries, so I know a lot about target audience and tone and editing and writing, just in general. So that is why we're here, and let us take a look at the lines that were sent to me. So number 1 is interesting because it is a musical. So I didn't look at it quite as intensely in the same way that the other ones have been reviewed, but I did change a little, so let's look at it real quick first. You okay, kid? You look like death. Okay, sorry. That's about to get real funny, but I have to explain it first. You're death. I love a good musical, and this one is very clearly leaning into the intrigue, kind of bold side of things, maybe weird. Like I said, I didn't go too hard into like the line edit here because it's a musical, but I will show you what I did, and we can kind of apply it both to if it was not a musical, if it was the first line of a book, and a musical in general. So, what I have done is here. You okay, kid? You look like death. The man laughed. The boy did not. Okay, sorry. That's about to get real funny. He wiped away a fake tear and grinned. You see, you are death. And so here, I might not, in a book, do like the man laughed, the boy did not, he wiped away a fake tear and grinned. Like, I might not phrase it exactly that way, but obviously in plays and musicals we have stage directions, so this would be more like a character direction or something that a character actor could do. But I just think breaking up some of it is helpful. So obviously in a musical, in a theater side of this, you wouldn't have people pausing to do these things. It would be the guy laughing as he's talking, or the happening, you know, it's all at once, but just to look at it, to read, to give those sorts of directions, I just kind of wrote it out that way, and we've got the intrigue, kind of bold, weird thing going on. So there's not as much to say about it because it is a musical line. I think it's interesting. I like this person somehow became death. Is he like a Grim Reaper or something? It's interesting, and I think that's cool. So let's move on to number 2. It all faded in an instant. a blink of an eye. Then the world went quiet. My eyes snapped open suddenly. Everything felt different. Empty. Then the realization struck me, and I involuntarily took a sharp breath. Who am I? So this is very clearly intrigue ambiguous, and I like the sensory and this, the directions that we have going on, the actions. I think we can make it sharper. So for point's sake, because in video 1 of all of this, I talked about how in the past we had a lot more people who would use questions or dialogue as an opening line, and so this kind of fits into that, and so we can show how that sort of thing works. So what I came up with is this. The images flashed through my mind like summer fireflies, there and then dark. I couldn't catch a single one. Who am I? So we're sort of playing into that intrigue, kind of ambiguous sort of side of things, and I know you're leading up to, in this example, who am I? So you're trying to give this like inside the head kind of situation where you're having all these like emotions and feelings and thoughts. But the thing to think about is at this point we know nothing. As readers, we have very little information, so there's almost nothing to ground us to with all of these thoughts and all of these actions. Like there's no place, there's no like physicality linking us or like grounding us anywhere. So it's sort of hard to feel anything, I guess, when you're reading that as the very, very beginning. But you can do the same kind of thing, just in a succinct sort of way, if that makes sense. So I think if we can build to it, even just like, we can build but short, like we can work on developing that confusion, but then right after we get to the first line, you could go into that more in depth. So we could talk about like the brief things we remembered. So I think it was in video, I think it was the last video, number 1. I talked about how I don't necessarily like thinking about writing as the same thing as creating a film, because I've worked a bit in both industries and they're just very different forms of media with a lot of overlap, but they end up being something different, right? So you can do things in film and visual media that you can't do in writing, and vice versa. Like you can, but you can't. So the problem becomes you don't want to rely on visual stimuli, like trying to describe visual stimuli in a book when that might not be the strongest way to get your message across. So in video number 2, the example I had, the thing I came up with was, that night still haunts him even 5 years later. Her screams, his blood, the finality and the silence that followed. It followed and followed and followed, like a ghost haunting his waking mind. In sleep, it was so much worse. And so I referenced all of this talking about her screams, his blood, the finality, blah, 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 blah. So it's almost like, it is almost like a movie trailer, right? Where you're taking those tiny snippets of information and you're working them in so it's not giving away too much, but it's drawing people in as a way to intrigue them. It's like, these are like little tastes of what we're gonna talk about, but you have no idea what is going on around it. Right? So like I said, I don't like to talk about it like it's a film because it's a very different way of thinking, but you can kind of think about the beginning when you're looking at intrigue in that way of just giving tiny little hints, right? Like you would see in a film trailer. And I think we can apply that to this version here. Get back to where I was. The fire alarm went off in my building and now I forget where I was. I had just said something about how things were like movie trailers, and then I was relating it back to this one, right? That's what was happening? Right, okay. So here we have, like, it all faded in an instant, blink of an eye, and then the world went quiet. And I think that this is very visual. So it is a very, like, heavy visual stimuli situation. So I can see it in a film where it's like somebody and it's close up on them and everything's sort of black and you're seeing like little flickers of things and then everything goes silent. And that's what I mean is it's a really interesting visual, but when we have nothing to ground it to in writing, it's probably better not to rely so much on a visual stimuli and give us something grounding, because you can still have it be grounding and ambiguous, which is sort of what I was hoping to play into in this example. But if you wanted to give something like that, you could do what I was talking about in that other example and give tiny snippets of things. I hope that helps. I know that that was maybe a little bit there by the end, but I hope that it makes sense. And I think that that's a worthwhile conversation to have, maybe more extensively if somebody was interested in hearing that in, experiences in film and then experiences in writing, and how we should probably separate those two things a little bit, because that's an opinion that I have. I don't know if it's a common one. I feel like it probably is. But having worked even just a little bit in film, and spending most of my life writing, I feel like I have some different experiences about that. But I don't know. If that's something interesting, let me know. And we will move on now to number 3. The air felt like it was knocked out of his lungs as he read the words written in front of him. Captain John William Gillander was dead. I love a good shock intro. Also, I don't know if this is true, because like I said, I don't have context, and I don't actually know if I've said this yet in this video. I like not having context because I would prefer to give a point of reference than a point of comparison. That's sort of how I feel about everything. So when I give people information and they, can see what I've done to their first lines, because I have no information, they can change it as much as they need to. They can do whatever they have in their own style with their information that actually applies to the story. So when I have nothing but the first line to go off of, I don't have to worry about giving people information that then they keep looking back and referencing and comparing, Anyway, let us talk about number 3 again. I have a couple of just general notes, not about first line writing, but just writing in general that I want to point out. And a couple of these I have TikToks for too, so again, at @scarlet_Ansley, that's all I'm saying. Anyway, let's see. So the air felt like. So felt is an example of a filter word, right? So felt, saw, thought, why can't I think of words, knew, watched, all of those sorts of things distance us from the perspective character. So it depends on your point of view, specifically what you're writing in, but generally we try to avoid filter words because they do take us a step back from the head that we're supposed to be in to see the world. So instead of doing something like that, we would just kind of leave it at the air was knocked out of his lungs, right? But then we have that, which is also a cliche. So if we want to clear out the cliches, we can just sort of rework it, make it a little bit stronger. And I also don't know if captain in this instance is relating to a boat captain, but that was the first thing that came to my mind. Could be anything, I guess. Could be the military. But I went with boat captain in my example. And so if we wanted to use some sort of simile or something for the opening line here, we can do that by relating it to a metaphor that's going to be related to character interests or character life experiences. So if we're assuming that the character who's reading the message maybe was serving on the boat under the captain, then he is probably going to have things related to nautical references, right? So we could play into that if you wanted to and give some information about your character through a metaphor that is related to them as a person. So this is what I came up with for that. Philip Holt had never been lost at sea, but he imagined it must feel like this. He read the words once, twice, 6 times. Captain John William Gillander, deceased. So you sort of get the same information, but we're giving it in a way that sort of almost is a little bit more dramatic. I don't know if that's what you're going for in terms of tone. Oh, I didn't even talk about what this was. So in your example, you're very clear going for intrigue, and I would say probably bold. And that's what I tried to continue on with in my example is intrigue bold with a little bit more context maybe. Just character names, really not that much context. But if you count context as him being related to the ocean and trying to make a metaphor tied to that, then perhaps that is also context if you wanted it to be. But I just try to make it a little bit punchier. I think that it's, an interesting place to start. I like opening on that kind of a dramatic thing. Like I said, I think that's a pretty fun place to start. And I do think that that's something I found not in the ones that I've reviewed for this series so far necessarily, but in some of the TikToks that I got are places that I wouldn't necessarily start in a story. So I have a whole other video I would like to do at some point if people are interested in the best place to start a story and how to know when you're starting in the right spot. So if that's something that's interesting to anybody, let me know. But yeah, I've had a lot of fun with these videos. It's something I've been meaning to do for a long time. If I get more, like I said, the link for the forum in the description, I would like to continue this as a thing, but I am a very teeny tiny creator, so I don't know if that's going to be something that happens. But if it does, great. If it doesn't, then this has been a lot of fun. I hope that my advice is helpful. I'm also going to be starting a blog related to all this. In my next couple videos, I'll probably have something down below about it. The first blog post is going to be all about this and all about writing first lines. So if that's something you would like, keep an eye on the videos, subscribe, like them, hit the bell and all of that to stick around. I make videos about writing. I'm going to do book reviews and stuff. If you watched my first video, I dropped a book. I talked about how I have a lot of very strong words about The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. I'm going to be doing a Legendborn blood-marked video very, very soon because I read both of those books in a short amount of time. So I'm going to have that going on, and I've got some other really fun stuff coming up, more about writing first lines, specifically about intrigue, lots of things. I'm going to be talking about death of the author and all of these things when we're seeing lots of authors doing crazy things lately. Not everybody, obviously, but some people. And, whether or not we should be reading books that we know are written by people we don't like, who have done things we don't like, and just sort of all of those sorts of things. So everything here about reading and writing and sometimes other things also, because I have thoughts. So if any of that is interesting to you, then subscribe and stick around. And until next time, thank you for being here, and sweet dreams!